The opportunity today is to tackle a big issue, at least in Europe. As you know, the backbone of the European industrial economy is made of small and medium companies. And the problem that today, and not just today, but it's a while of those small and medium companies that most of them are facing hard times to innovate. And today we have the opportunity to deep dive this topic. Particularly, we will go to Germany, and I have as a guest Nils Wagner. Nils is the CEO of REHAU New Ventures, and REHAU is a 75 years old German company, typical expression of the Mittelstand, working in a very, very mature product cycle that is one of those companies that are facing obsolescence, maturity, disruption. Let's call it whatever we wanted, but substantially that's the reality. And so, Nils, first of all, welcome, and super happy to have the opportunity to talk to you. And I will firstly ask you to introduce yourself and REHAU, and then we'll go a bit more into the details of the innovation journey of REHAU and your journey regarding innovation with REHAU.
Thank you very much, Alberto. It's great to be here to talk a little bit about my story, but also the story of REHAU, which are actually quite closely linked, because my grandfather, he founded this company 75 years ago as a very young man. This was in Germany after the Second World War. He discovered plastics as a new technology, and he immediately saw a huge potential in this technology, and so he borrowed money from a wealthy family that he knew in order to buy the first production machine to produce the first extruded REHAU product. So if you wish, it was a tech startup before this term existed. The money borrowed today would be venture capital, right? And in that sense, it's one of the few let's say, successful examples of a unicorn, which was founded 75 years ago. I myself decided to join the family business after I studied architecture. So maybe at one time I was considering a different career, but was actually happy to come back to the family business to take on also the responsibility that comes with such a business. Today we have over 20,000 employees worldwide, and that's a responsibility we take very seriously. Many lives depend on the work for REHAU. But I started actually in a sales role. It was important for me to really start bottom up, and I started from the market and customer perspective, so to speak. This took me then a few years later to Asia. So in a sales director role, I moved to Shanghai, China with my wife and 3-year-old son at the time. We didn't really know how long we'd be there at first, but what we thought might be 2 or 3 years turned into 8 years. And in the second half of my deployment, I was able to take on the responsibility as co-CEO for the whole region, Asia Pacific. We then did decide to come back to Europe. We live now, and with that, for me, a new chapter began. I then started to build up REHAU New Ventures as a corporate venture builder, and that's really where, let's say, for me, I was a very active part in this innovation journey.
Immediately, 2 questions for you. Number one is a bit describe what REHAU does, what are the main areas of activities. And secondly, again, you said properly 75 years ago, It was a tech company. And how is possible that company that started with such a strong entrepreneurial drive, how this entrepreneurial drive fade down the way? What are the reasons, based on your opinion? So this is two things I would like to, being part of your family, you're a bit biased, but I think you can also be the right person to answer this question. It is very difficult to answer, but it's so crucial and so common.
I mean, I started just by briefly mentioning the topic of plastic. So, plastics back in the 40s and 50s really had this incredible trajectory because there was so much that could be re-engineered using this high-performing, readily available material. So it really started just by substitution. So, you would substitute materials like leather or like metal or wood. And I think one maybe telling example for our journey is the automotive industry. So we had the first automotive contract in 1953 for Volkswagen, and actually for the Volkswagen Beetle, which turned out to be a very successful model. And there we supplied the holding strap, which previously was made out of leather, and which we then replaced with a polymer, with a plastic. And actually, it even has some embossings on it, which simulates like a stitching. So it really tried to imitate this material. About 20 years later, we actually developed for Volkswagen again the first polymer bumper, so plastic bumper to replace a steel bumper in a mass production car, the Volkswagen Passat. And so this, was something that really ended up completely changing the way cars were designed. I mean, today you have so many exterior body parts which are made from high performance polymers. They're very complex. We supply, for example, the Porsche Panamera. This is our largest bumper module, and these all include already assembled the sensors, the lights, very complex, painted in exactly the same body color, and we deliver just in sequence. So basically, we use the truck from our assembly line as storage. It basically pulls up to the assembly line, and the first bumper that is taken out of the truck is then exactly the one that goes onto the first car that's being assembled on the line. That's a just-in-sequence production technology. So this all seems very sophisticated, but actually this business by now has come under huge pressure. It's a low-margin business. So what seems complex and demanding and very technologically driven has just been commoditized over the course of the years. And I think that's quite representative of what we do. And we maybe have similar situation in other areas of business. We supply a lot of materials into the construction industry, interior design industry, and some medical components, and also some raw material trading. So that's what we do. You see, we serve several sectors, but we see similar challenges in all of these sectors. It's just that with the maturity of this technology, with the maturity of these markets, it really is more and more about scale. It's less and less about really being the leader in terms of technology, in terms of quality. And I think this is a malaise that's facing many industries, many traditional industries in Europe. And the automotive industry itself actually is a perfect example. The German automotive industry, who's missed this trend of electric vehicles, who now face pressure from not only Tesla, but of course now from Chinese manufacturers who have learned to build great cars and who understand where the value creation is today. The value creation today is not in putting together steel parts and building a car. It's really in the software that actually powers the vehicle and that defines the experience for the consumer. So that shift in where value is being created, I think, is impacting almost every traditional industry.
Yes, I agree. And I think it doesn't mean that the company are losing technical ability. Actually, they are currently sophisticating, but technically speaking, at least from my perspective, they are losing ability to find new avenues, to find new directions. That is the part. I think in the direction they are in, they're becoming phenomenal operating companies, able to deliver incremental innovation, because they're working under gigantic pressure in terms of cost, in terms of timing, deliveries, but the real point is they are not able to drive a new generation of product, new generation of business. This is what is really missing. And then at the end, they are clipped to the life cycle of the industry they are attached to. And if the life cycle goes down, they go down with them. So that's the point.
I fully agree. And like you said, I mean, our automotive operation is highly complex. It's hugely impressive what has been achieved over decades, the evolution. But, you know, with the decline of the industry, we are also faced with huge challenges. So, I mean, ultimately, that's where we try to come in with our new ventures. We try to, first of all, latch back to the entrepreneurial spirit, because, you know, another problem with large organizations is they've become extremely risk averse. They've really evolved to be, you know, minimizers of risks, to be, you know, optimizers of performance. And with that, a certain entrepreneurial muscle starts to deteriorate, starts to atrophy, and you know, many other mechanisms set in. So this, you know, risk aversion really also leads to almost visceral reactions to new ideas. So new ideas get treated with antibodies and are, you know, immediately encapsulated, neutralized. That's kind of, you know, what reflexes start to evolve in a large organization. And that's also why it's difficult for actually such businesses, such organizations to, you know, on their own identify these new avenues. They've been socialized and trimmed to not focus on that, but to really focus on their core. And so, yeah, that's kind of this this challenge, or this almost systemic.
I like the analogy again. Large corporations tend to be risk averse, and they tend, obviously, on their own they can't find new avenues. And company like yours that are used to work with this large organization in a certain way absorb the same mentality. You are in the delivery mode and you do what is told. You need to reduce any possible mistakes, because again, this company, I think the big problem is they are able to have return on everything that they do, and they need to avoid any possible mistakes and failure. And this is the perfect pattern of operation, but is actually the exact opposite of innovation and entrepreneurship. Because again, innovation, unfortunately, is not a game where you win everything. It's a game that is dominated by power law, and so 1 out of 100 works. But that one is really a game changer. And so that's probably the problem, that they transfer to their own suppliers, and then the suppliers become like them.
Yeah, all these organizations become actually machines themselves, right? That's kind of what this evolution leads to. And you know, you lose that skill and understanding that you need to continuously place new bets, right? Continuously place new bets. And you know, the thing is, Alberto, we've forgotten all the things that went wrong over the last 75 years, right? And I'm sure many things went wrong, you know, and I'm sure, you know, all kinds of people, you know, tried new things and they failed. Today, we only know what actually survived, right? And this defines our perception. So this is a bit unfortunate, actually. You know, if we talk a lot more about what we tried back in the 60s and 70s and 80s, which didn't work, that would be healthy, because it reminds us that we need to continuously try new things. But these are not the discussions that are being maybe had at certain places in the organization. Again, it's more about, you know, how do we avoid risk, and how do we just perform more and more like a well-oiled and well-run machine, right? That's kind of where this is.
So REHAU New Ventures, what's new into that? What is the approach that you put into operation? What it worked, what it didn't, what results did you get? So tell us.
So when I took over back at the beginning of 2020, actually there were these teams that were, I mean, already a few years back, there was definitely the understanding also, you know, the top board level, that you know, there was a certain risk of being disrupted, that, you know, new digital technologies were, you know, game changers in many other industries, and that we had to deal with this. So teams were set up. There was a digitization team and an innovation lab. And the idea was that, you know, these people with a certain skill set would then work with different parts of the organization, with different business units, with different divisions, and then, you know, there would be kind of this natural occurrence of innovative projects that would ultimately lead to a transformation of the whole organization. I think this kind of, you know, inside-out transformation idea was very much behind it. But we, you know, then when I took over, I clearly saw that this did not work. I mean, there were issues. Projects were executed, but, you know, they never really bore any fruit in terms of really impacting the market. So we said that, you know, it's really important that we kind of marry, on the one hand, maybe the skills, the competence, the new thinking, with also the entrepreneurial responsibility, so that, you know, whatever we created that was new, there was a team that would then also be responsible for bringing this new idea to market, and that's then what you know, motivated me to you know, come away from this kind of consulting role into really the venture role, and from there we started on a journey to become a venture builder. And what that means today is that we work together with people from the core business in order to identify opportunity spaces, because we have a wealth of assets, right? We have great market access, we have market insights, we maybe even have IP here or there that's currently not being utilized. And so we identify these problem or potential areas, and then we basically take these and we initiate a entrepreneur in residence program. So what we then do is, based on this opportunity space, we look for future co-founders to come in. They receive time and money to really come up with a solution or product that addresses this opportunity space, and they have 6 months to do this until we then bring it in front of the investment committee. If the investment committee is convinced that this opportunity is worth pursuing, that's when we basically go into a immediate setting up of a new legal entity. This team that brought this topic forward will become the co-founders. They get 80% of the equity. We take a minority stake, and then basically we are at a startup pre-seed stage at this point, where we then also invest into the startup, but we additionally look for other outside investors as well. So it's really about being very entrepreneurially driven, but also very market tested. So, you know, this team is really out there. We, of course, support them where we can. That's the advantage we bring to the table. But ultimately, they also need to convince third-party investors to invest, and they definitely need to work until they have product market fit.
So you do not start a new entity if there are not external investors, or the first step is funded by you, and afterwards you open up the capital to external investors? How does it work?
So we finance the residency, those 6 months. Okay. And if there's a positive invest decision, we do actually then immediately set up an outside company. It could be that they already have a potential investor. They definitely have interested customers, potential paying customers. But really setting up the legal entity then, and giving the founders that equity is what then simulates the real startup situation as closely as possible. And that's where they need to, you know, from bootstrapping to finding investors to you know, pivoting, all of that really kind of goes its natural way, and we just simply, I would say, we accompany them. You know, we offer a concierge service, like, you know, if they have needs or they need access to experts, or we can give them a bit of, you know, IT support. We of course have a legal department that can, you know, give them support when it comes to IP, etc. So yes, we support and help where we can, but ultimately, this is a founder team. They own 80% of the equity, so they are really driving the business forward.
And just to understand, a couple of not trivial questions. Number one is, where do you find the co-founders? Because again, you identify the problem. Again, it's easy to find a person that has identified a problem on his own, and maybe want to deploy. Now, substantially, you have an idea, you have a problem, and you need to put a person in charge of that problem. That always is not super easy because cannot be convinced. So how this match does work?
Well, this is probably the most crucial point in this whole journey, to find the right people. And what we've been doing over the last year is also a lot of communication, because people need to know who we are. They need to understand what our program is, but they also need to be convinced that, we are able to leverage some of these assets that we have in a large organization that's really been around for a long time. So that takes a lot of convincing. Luckily, by now, we actually do find that our message resonates, and we do actually attract people. And what maybe is a typical component of such a profile is that they've already found it before, successfully or also not successfully, that they've maybe already had an exit or maybe not had an exit, but they're definitely willing to try this whole journey again, which is arduous, very well. If you're successful, if you're not successful, it's always very, very painful. So these guys must have some kind of strong inner conviction that, they are entrepreneurs. And what they then hopefully see is that they can try it again with a topic that they're probably familiar with. So obviously we look for people with relevant experience in a similar space, but that now they kind of have this big brother at their side to give them a bit of extra support. So that should increase their chances of success. So that's our proposition. I have to say it's been very heartening, the kind of talents we find. And actually we have a team in China, we have a team in Europe, mainly in Germany, and we have a team in the US. In the US, we've actually partnered with the venture capital fund that focuses on, let's say the built environment, which is also where we try to build our ventures. And to have from the very early stage on, again, that expertise on board as well, the corporate venture expertise together with our strengths, that's really allowed us to find excellent talent in that highly interesting and dynamic ecosystem in the US. So long and short of it, it's all about the people we find, and we've been I've been very encouraged by the talent we've been able to find lately.
Can you tell us a couple of success stories going? Again, success is a bad word to use because, again, you're never successful, you never fail, but substantially. Do you have some of those ventures that you believe are particularly promising? Can you tell a couple of examples?
Yeah, maybe. Something we started very early on. This was a project I actually supported when I was still in China in 2019. We actually understood that REHAU produces fantastic PVC window profiles, a product we more or less invented back in the early 60s. And we saw that actually this industry in China was highly competitive, delivering profiles to window manufacturers. So we came up with a different go-to-market strategy, and we really packaged it as a complete window, and we really packaged it as a renovation solution so that people living in apartments with poor windows could basically find our windows through a network that we built up through a lot of social media engagement. And actually this has developed very successfully. And here I would say this is a perfect example of a project which is still very close to the core business. So let's say the amount of innovation is maybe somewhat limited. It's a new go-to-market strategy. It's a different marketing approach. But this was very successful so far. It's really grown. It was profitable very early on. So that's definitely, for myself, an early success story. And then just to show a bit maybe the breadth of our different approaches, we believe that the trades and crafts in the construction industry. So if we think about European markets, your typical plumber or electrician, that these trades face a lot of challenges. First of all, they need to become much more efficient. Second of all, we now have a whole generation of tradespeople going into retirement over the next year. So the whole baby boom generation will leave the job market, and we already face a lack of skilled labor. And originally we thought we would develop, some digital tools to make them a bit more effective, a bit more efficient. And we went through the kind of classic mistakes of, building a product that we thought would be great, that we thought they would love. And we just realized that they couldn't care less about the products that we were trying to pitch to them. And one of their true pain points was actually the lack of labor. They were missing people. They could serve more jobs if they would have a larger labor force, or if they could find the people that they've been looking for months, if not years. And so based on that, basically we started a residency to address this issue. And the team has actually now built a platform, a kind of marketplace, where we find talent in Eastern Europe. We, through our algorithms, understand what their qualification is based on the education in Romania or Bulgaria or Poland, and we know also where the skills gaps are in terms of what is being required for an open position in Germany. And so we try to help bridge that skills gap, and then of course do the matchmaking. And this for me is an example where we're very far away from our core business, still in a relevant industry, and where the solution is very much digital platform driven. So maybe that shows a bit the kind of different areas that we're
if I can summarize the two examples, number one, the product that you're selling is the same, but substantially the way you sell it is totally new. So substantially you change the go-to-market, as you mentioned, and the business model. And the second case, actually, your experience of pain in doing your own job that is substantially lacking of your workforce, and then you ended up building up a platform to solve this pain, not just to yourself, but probably to many others. So the technique speaking, again, looking at the overall approach. In the first case, you have the product, but you needed to channel in a different way. The second time, you have an internal need, and you build a business to solve it, not just for you, but for everybody else. So this is, again, the ability to probably to see new avenues. That was new direction. That is the problem we were discussing back at the beginning of our conversation. That is what, technically speaking, companies are missing down the way, because again, they are so focused on delivering what they are supposed to deliver with perfection, sophistication, ability, skill, competence. But at the end, they're just walking away, moving into rails, and they cannot see alternative ways of moving out. So that's a big problem. Coming to the conclusion of our conversation, again, you are third generation of family business, and again, there is not exactly a way of saying that is so particularly generous about third generation of family businesses. The first one build, the second one expand, the third one destroy. So you're a good example of probably a positive addition of the third generation. But again, addressing your peers, meaning again, fourth generation, second generation, fourth generation of former, still solid, but former very successful family businesses, mid-sized companies, which are the tips that you can give them to try to change the course of action?
I think first you have to be clear that something is something needs to give. That there is this pressure. I think most likely, if you're not quite there yet in the maturity cycle, or if you're in just such a super comfortable niche, that pain is not there, and I think as an owner, maybe you feel that pain, but maybe parts of the organization, they do not. So I think it's really important to ask yourself, where do you stand on that life cycle journey, and how much runway do you still have with what you're offering? And I think if you know you're still in a good spot, then that's great. If you have another 10 strong years ahead of you, and that seems pretty obvious, fantastic. So you know, you just need clarity on where your organization, where your business is heading strategically, and then based on that, you need to ask yourself, you know, what you want to do. And you know, if you do believe that significant either change is necessary or significant new opportunities need to be identified, I mean, there is a tool set for that, right? What we are doing is one possible answer. So, you know, from classic M&A to divestiture, to entering into strategic alliances, joint ventures, or corporate venturing. I mean, this is a bit the, you know, the different options you have, the different tools you have in that corporate strategic development toolbox. And you know, based on that, I think you need to evaluate the different options. You need to definitely think carefully about, you know, what is maybe the right answer for your core business. But in terms of really tapping into new opportunities, and in terms of really embarking on a journey where you need at least, you know, those 10 years plus, right, until you can start to significantly talk about success or not. You know, that is where corporate venturing, I think, becomes interesting. And it's maybe then always a bit the question, well, what does corporate venturing mean? I mean, corporate venturing allows you to tap into what should be the cutting edge of any kind of development, right? This is really where, you know, technology is creating new opportunities, but it comes with a high risk. That's something you need to be aware of. And, you know, ultimately, you know, that's the way I see it. We're trying to tap into what happened 75 years ago, where a curious, ambitious, future entrepreneur, you know, stumbled on something where he saw the potential, and that led to decades of prosperity, not only for the entrepreneur, but also for thousands of people. So that's what we're trying to tap into. But again, it's one tool in that toolbox, and I can't say which, you know, you need to make.
Yeah, I think you said it all, and you said it clearly. What I could add on top, just to complement what you were saying, since I'm putting two things that you said close together, and let me know if my addition is okay with you, because I don't want to put my words into yours. Is you said, oh, you know, you need to understand if where your business stands on the life cycle, if you have at least 10 years of good health ahead of you. And if so, you say fine. And then you say, but you need to develop new avenues, and then corporate ventures takes a good 10 years to develop such avenues. So my recommendation is do not wait that the runway ends, because it's very, very difficult to find solution when there is a certain level of water in the house, and it's difficult to fix the gap. I think if you are in good health and you have a runway, use the time and the runway to develop new avenues, because despite you don't see it happening, it will. And will probably today, given the pace of technology, given the pace of change, will happen earlier rather than later. So my recommendation is that one. But again, this is my words. I wanted to hear your, and then.
You know, I mean, you are, of course, right. That is the logical conclusion. I would just say, you know, depending on the situation, and then maybe this is also depending on, you know, the situation in the ownership family, maybe that's also the right time to sell, Alberto, and then to use that, you know, to use those means to reinvest into something completely new. There are different options, but you're absolutely right. You know, you need to take the right action at the right point in time, and that is always earlier rather than later.
Yeah, again, take action, whatever the action you feel appropriate, but take action, because again, just letting it go, I think, is not an action. It's not a strategy.
Exactly. And look, one thing I always recommend is just, you know, talk to others who are in a similar situation, learn from their experience. I'm always more than happy to really share, you know, our journey, success and failures on our journey. I think that's hugely important because there is no, template or fixed solution, different options. So, learn from peers. So that would be my first recommendation. Just, approach me. I'm happy to sit down over a coffee and just share the experiences that we have had.
And my recommendation, if it happens to talk with Nils and you have the opportunity, please do it, because I think there is always something to learn. Thank you so much, Nils, for sharing your knowledge, your journey. Congratulations to REHAU, again, for being able to change direction. Congratulations to you for bringing this new wave of entrepreneurial spirit back into the machine. So,
thank you, Alberto, for the great discussion. It was a pleasure.